Maxx again, and I'm here with Julie Wald and Vladimir Verano, and we're talking about the latest project from Julia that Vlad helped bring to life, which is called the Suspension of Disbelief. And can you tell us a little bit about this, Julia?
Yeah, I started the project in early March, right before lockdown started, and it was just going to be interviews with service workers, mostly in the restaurant and bar industry. And then lockdown happened, and I was laid off, and everybody I know was laid off. And it seemed like the perfect time to extend the project to other industries in Seattle. So I started interviewing more people outside of the restaurant industry and doing comics based on those interviews, and made it into a book at the end.
And Vlad, what was your role in the project?
Well, basically, right as we were going into lockdown, as the gallery with all the members, we stayed in touch through the whole process of transitioning into, what lockdown meant for us. And then Julia mentioned her project, and I was just like, this sounds really, really interesting. And basically, for everybody out there, my job is to essentially help people self-publish their books, but I've also worked on some graphic novels and comics. And basically, the way that Julie described her project, I felt that it was a very timely and important thing to try and capture. And so I volunteered my services just to help Julia see the project through from, and I would take on all the production difficulties while she took on the creative work.
So so this is stories from people, how they've adapted or how the pandemic has affected them, and why put it out now instead of at the end. So this is sort of unique in that I think a lot of people are waiting until there's some sort of closure to tell stories, but you've released it right now at the end of the year.
Yeah, the type of process I used was more in the moment interview style. So basically like sort of a day in the life or what they were experiencing that week. And with COVID and the way it's moved through the community, people's lives have been changing really, really fast. So a few people in this book either found jobs or are still unemployed, or their situations changed, or maybe they've even moved out of Seattle. So it is a rather in the moment piece of work that documents like very, very small increments of time within the pandemic itself. It is more like journalism than just a straight narrative story. So I didn't really think that I needed to wait till the end of the pandemic to put it out, considering even within the book itself, you'll see that I have each interview, and then I put the dates of each interview to clarify what was going on at that time. And considering we've all been in lockdown for so long, and this pandemic has lasted longer than anybody ever thought it would, even April now seems like an eternity. A decade has passed in between now and then. So I didn't feel the need to wait to put it out for that reason.
So how did you decide who to interview? Did they come to you, or were you like searching for people?
A little bit of both. My first interviews were all with friends. So the first interview itself was with somebody I knew outside of social media and other things. And I got a few coworkers to talk to me as well, because most of us had multiple jobs, not just one in the industry. And then I put out a call on Facebook for more people. I wanted to talk to people in healthcare, teachers, that sort of thing. And that's where I started to get people that I had absolutely no relation with or no connection. And that was real fun, because I think when you know somebody, sometimes when you're interviewing them, when you're writing down their thoughts and things, you have this bias because you already know their personality traits a little bit. And when you're talking to people you don't know at all, you have to be a little bit more careful with how you write their character, their voice, that sort of thing. Yeah.
So for both of you, I'm curious if there's one interview or one person story that really stands out as your favorite.
I would have to say it's probably a tie between Norden, who is homeless and still is homeless, because his story was strangely optimistic. And I've known him for a very long time, and it was literally the first time I've actually ever had a conversation with him outside of just hello, goodbye. And so doing that interview and sitting down and because I obviously had to do it outside, I couldn't do it over the phone or on video chat, was interesting. He had a lot to say. He's a really educated person. So that was really entertaining and also enlightening. And it was nice that it ended on a high note rather than, I guess, a depressing one, considering the pandemic is pretty sad in itself. And then Paul, just because Paul was really, he was just very intuitive and had a lot of, I guess, deep thoughts about how the pandemic was affecting him and his family that really moved me. So those two would be, I guess, my favorites.
So I was actually thinking Paul as well. And just for some context, Paul is a bus driver. He drives the 49.
Yeah.
And I guess for me, the reason why they're all really great perspectives, a lot of perspectives I had no idea about. But Paul's mainly because I have spent the pandemic riding buses. I've, for various reasons, I've had to travel around, limited, but still travel around the city. And I've seen firsthand what the bus drivers had to deal with. And this is before the special shields came up that were all installed on the buses. So all these bus drivers, including Paul, are driving around, there was a scramble to get PPE for them. So I saw bus drivers kind of some with fancy masks and others with the stuff that you can just dispose, or the ones that you just can simply pull up. There wasn't a standard immediately when Metro was, all the drivers were just driving around. And so just seeing Paul's perspective about how mentally to approach every day, get on that bus and drive around with all these strangers. They're in various states of distress and anxiety, and often I've seen them take it out on bus drivers. And so, anyway, that's why I picked Paul.
So, do you plan on continuing this project at all? Is this the end of it, or as we go through, do you collect more interviews? Where do we go from here?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I decided to end it at this point so far when I started having problems collecting more interviews with people. I did about 14, and then I started to be that I was chasing people down, and then I was kind of okay, 14 is enough. I wouldn't mind picking it back up again and doing more of them. It just, I feel like the time has to be right. I am doing other projects right now in the same sort of interview comic style or starting them, not necessarily about COVID-19. But for now, I feel like I have said all that I want to say at the moment about what's going on. Obviously, there are people in certain industries that I didn't get a chance to talk to. I actually did try to talk to a farmer who was not interested in the project. Yeah, I was a little bummed. But and a few people in a few other industries. I really did want to get somebody who owned a small business in the International District, especially since I live near the International District, and they're one of the hardest hit neighborhoods in Seattle when the pandemic started, partially due to racism and people having xenophobic ideas about where the virus originated from. But sort of had some bad luck contacting people there. So for now, the 14 interviews is what I have. I'm not going to say that if I find other people I want to talk to that I find interesting, that I won't pick it up again.
Well, and that's actually one of the benefits of, it's difficult self-publishing any book. I've seen it happen time and time again, and I know the work that creators put into their stuff, whether it's a comic book or like a 300-page novel. But one of the advantages of having to suffer through trying to do this all yourself is that you can actually do that where, like 6 months down the line, you might have done some follow-up work with a few of these people, and you might want to add an extra page to the story. And basically you and I would work together to get the next version of the book out with a few extra pages, and you have full control over that. So the flexibility in being able to grow the project I think is a key benefit here. So
yeah, is that sort of what motivated you to self-publish, or was it the timing? I know it takes a lot more time to work with a publisher to get stuff out.
Timing, and also I wanted to get it out pretty quickly, considering it is sort of a in the moment times, I don't want to say time sensitive project, but obviously the interview times, the dates are very important. So I wanted full control over when it was produced, how it was produced, in addition to the fact that a lot of those places you have to apply to, and they get, hundreds of books every day, submissions, PDF files. And then, they might not even look at it. They might not like it. They may never accept it. So you're looking at applying to lots and lots of publishers and just hoping and praying that one of them actually emails you back. Yeah. And not just emails you back, but it's not a rejection. And coming from the illustration world, working with art directors, I know that process all too well. And this was a personal project, and I didn't really want to have to depend on other people who may or may not think that my email to them was worthy, I guess, for the process.
So what were your challenges from both sides of the work that you put into it?
I'm a terrible speller. I'm really bad, and all the lettering in this is hand lettering.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So that was a big one for me. I mean, God, I don't want to make it a game to see if there's anything else that's misspelled in here. I'm sorry if there is. I really am. Or I'm missing a comma or something. But that was probably the biggest one, and also drawing people. These were people who had sent me their portraits, and it was really nerve-wracking to like render their facial features and then submit it to them, be like, you're always concerned that you're offending somebody if they don't like it, or, is this what you think I look like? So for me, the most stressful part of the project was, sending people the manuscripts after they were edited, because there are things that some people wanted taken out, some things people wanted added in. Oh, this doesn't sound like me. Or, drawing, the actual drawing of them was very stressful, for sure.
So how did you, did Vlad do like proofreading and edits for you, or did you do that on your own? For the lettering part?
Vlad found a few things. My boyfriend also found a few things. And then actually my first crosscut article, I mentioned it to the editor, like, hey, if you're gonna put these comics in, make sure some of them are spelled correctly. And she found just a few things in the ones that she wanted to use. So I would say it was a collective effort. Yeah.
Well, the whole correcting some spelling errors was, in a way, part of the process on my side of the whole thing, because basically what I would do is I would get the scans from Julia, and then I would just zoom in and begin looking at because they're so detailed. Because just going to take a moment to show you the cover, because Julia did this amazing city scene, and it's just so intricate. And I know myself from working on pen and ink illustrations that sometimes some scans just don't quite come through cleanly. And so I went in and just very carefully found areas where there were little pencil lines, and I just eliminated them and, tried to make sure that the lines were tightened up as best as they could. And in the process, I would come across a word that had maybe a little bit of a pencil outline against, say, the S. And I would just come in and just very carefully erase the pencil lines, and then maybe catch a small typo. And, there's enough words that you can, in Photoshop, you can actually pull part of the person's handwriting and build a new word.
Oh, very clever.
At certain points when I had to, so.
Nice. So for people that are trying to figure out how to do their own book layouts and editing, did you use Photoshop for the cleanup there?
Yeah, Photoshop. Obviously, there's all sorts of alternatives out there. There's Affinity, make some design programs. There's Clip Studio Paint is another one that people use for doing comics. A lot of time it's a combination of people scan images and then build on them on that program. But overall, Photoshop is the most powerful and versatile to be able to go in and take care of all of that. And especially when it comes to making sure that you have all the color values correct. Even though this was black and white, we had to make sure that the blacks were standardized, so that there wasn't anything like an under or over saturation for certain pages, so that when it went to print, that all the blacks came out exactly the same richness of black. And that's one of the folds that can happen sometimes for people.
So did you actually make any changes that people requested, or is there anyone that you think is bitter because you didn't make changes that they requested?
Oh, I made most of the changes that everybody requested. Obviously, if they wanted things taken out, some people's names have been changed for privacy reasons. There were just a few things, like certain things that people wanted added in that was just like, this is going to be way too wordy. But I tried to accommodate almost everybody's additions, particularly if they thought that their voice wasn't coming through the right way, or a few people were saying, hey, this isn't how I talk. Can you add these phrases in? This is more like me. And in that case, it just made sense to add what they wanted, because it's supposed to be in first person, but it's not supposed to be my voice. So if it made the person feel more comfortable, feel more like it was their voice, then yeah, I added in changes, almost all of them. Nobody, I mean, to my knowledge, has been bitter, but I don't know what people say behind it. Yeah.
Yeah, so have you gotten feedback from the people that you've interviewed?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if they're just being nice. That's the thing. It's like, oh yeah, I can't, you drew me and all this stuff, so I can't say anything mean to you. But most of them have been pretty positive. I've been giving everybody that I can contact who I interviewed a free copy of the book. So far, I haven't reached everybody yet. People seem to be really happy with how the book looks, how they're portrayed, at least to my knowledge.
And then any last thoughts that you want to include? I think I got to all of my questions. So,
I am a little sad it's over. I got really involved with it, which is I think why I wanted to continue the interviews, and then it eventually became too difficult at the time to do. This is the creating the comics was the most fun of the project, I would say. That's my last thought.
Yeah, it's usually everything after the making that isn't as fun.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to pipe in with the whole production end of things. Usually the sort of the spin that I put when I'm talking to clients is, you know, you're the one who created this whole project. Now I'm the one who takes on all your headaches. So, you know, in this particular case with Julia, it was like everything that needs to happen digitally and production wise was a thing that I took care of and moved forward. And then at every new stage, we communicated and worked through that. And you know, not all projects are equal. Some of them are, you know, a little bit more boring than others. And the one thing that I can definitely say about Julia's project is, like, aside from the fact that it's a really great concept and really important, because I feel that the stories that have been told about COVID and the lockdowns and everything have pretty much ignored all the people in this book, all the ones who aren't suddenly finding out that COVID is a problem. They found out from day one because a lot of these places ended up staying open, or bus drivers having to drive, baristas having to serve coffee, nurses, and all sorts of emergency service people and whatnot. And so, you know, like, more of their stories need to be spotlighted because we need to be, you know, aware and thankful of their efforts to, you know, like keep bringing us some kind of sense of normalcy. But all of this is wrapped up in Julia's amazing artwork. Julia mentioned earlier about the portraits and sort of kind of freaking out about it. And that was also one of the most amazing parts of the project, is that you read somebody's section and there's all these drawing snippets of their particular profession and life. And then at the end of it, you've got a drawing of them. And there's just so much personality in their faces, even though they were portraits sent. You know, the amazing thing about a really good illustrator is that their artwork brings out a certain facet of somebody's soul with the illustration. And I could look at the image of someone and just think about the story that they just told and wrap it all up, and it felt so much more real than just simply having a story told without that kind of facial connection. So I think that these stories, even though they're not very long, I think they resonate so much more because of that, you know, Julie's great portraits and illustrations of it. So it was a lot of fun. It was, you know, all projects are stressful because you have to be detail oriented and stuff. But, you know, like, when they're fun, that just, like, makes the stress sort of really die down. So I'm really happy with working on this project, and I'm excited for more people to see it.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing all of your thoughts. And you can pick up the Suspension of Disbelief from Push Pull.